The SEAL team moved silently deep into the dense forest. Their footsteps were muffled by the thick layer of fallen leaves and the soft moss covering the ground. The canopy above was a tangled mess of branches and leaves filtering the fading light into dim streaks that barely touched the earth. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine needles, and every breath they took seemed to pull in the weight of the woods around them. Their mission was critical, a covert operation to intercept enemy communications and gather intelligence deep behind hostile lines. The men were highly trained, seasoned warriors who had faced danger countless times, but there was a tension in the air. This time, something different that gnawed at their nerves. Their movements were calculated silent, a choreography of survival and precision. The team leader signaled a halt, and they pressed against a fallen log, scanning the shadows ahead. The silence was broken only by the distant call of a lone bird, and the rustle of leaves in the breeze, but beneath the natural sounds lay a sinister stillness that made their skin crawl. They knew the enemy was near, and that every step forward could bring them closer to a trap. The forest was alive with hidden eyes, watching their every move, the enemy blending seamlessly with the shadows like ghosts, waiting for the right moment to strike. The SEALs spread out carefully, their weapons raised ready to respond to the slightest threat. Their senses sharpened, the faint crack of a twig or a sudden movement in the underbrush, sending adrenaline surging through their veins. Suddenly, the team froze as a subtle shift in the atmosphere reached their ears, the crunch of footsteps that were not their own, the sound of movement closing in from all sides. They were surrounded the dense trees now, a cage, the enemy closing the net tighter with every second. The team leader whispered orders to hold their positions and prepare for contact, but the tension was unbearable. The men pressed back-to-back eyes, scanning every shadow, every corner of the forest. Their training kicked in, automatic responses honed by countless missions. But this was different. The enemy was organized, prepared, and closing in fast. There was no clear escape route, only the suffocating weight of the trees and the growing noise of approaching footsteps. One of the SEALs spotted a flash of movement across the clearing, a glimpse of a figure slipping between the trees. Their presence was no longer a secret, and the enemy had the advantage of numbers and terrain. The team braced for the inevitable firefight, their hearts pounding a rapid rhythm in their chests as the first shots rang out, breaking the silence like thunderbullets whipped through the air, the sharp crack of rifles echoing off the trees. The SEALs returned fire with disciplined precision, using every ounce of cover the forest provided. But the enemy pressed harder, moving like shadows darting between the trees. The battle was fierce and unrelenting every moment, a test of strength and will. Amidst the chaos, the team leader called for a retreat, signaling a fallback to a more defensible position. But the forest offered little shelter, and the enemy pursued relentlessly. The SEALs moved swiftly, dodging fire and navigating the tangled undergrowth, their breathing ragged but determination burning bright. Their options were shrinking, and the weight of their situation pressed heavier with every step. They found a small clearing, surrounded by thick brush and rocks, a temporary haven, but still vulnerable to the enemy closing in from all sides. The team regrouped, panting, exchanging quick words, and reassessing their dwindling choices. They were deep in hostile territory, cut off, and surrounded with no backup in sight, and time slipping away like sand through their fingers. The tension was palpable. The silence between bursts of gunfire, a waiting breath before the storm. The SEALs knew that their survival depended on quick thinking and teamwork, but even with their skills, the situation felt desperate. The weight of the mission and the lives of their brothers pressed down on them, making every decision a matter of life or death. Then through the haze of battle and uncertainty, a new presence appeared like a ghost emerging from the mist. The lone figure moved with purpose and deadly grace, her eyes sharp, scanning the battlefield, assessing the chaos. Her reputation as a sniper was known to few, but the impact she would have was about to be undeniable. The team caught sight of her and a flicker of hope ignited in their hearts, but the outcome was still uncertain. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the sniper took position, her rifle steady and cold against her shoulder. She was calm, a stark contrast to the fury of the fight unfolding around her. The enemy had underestimated the force that had entered their midst, and the tide of the battle was poised on the edge of change. The SEAL team watched and waited there, fate hanging by a thread, ready for what was to come. The lone female sniper moved with a quiet confidence through the underbrush, her steps barely making a sound as she approached the edge of the clearing where the SEAL team was pinned down. The chaos of gunfire echoed behind her, but she focused only on the task ahead. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the enemy positions, calculating distance angles and wind direction with a precision born of countless hours in the field. She crouched behind a fallen tree trunk and raised her rifle to her shoulder. Adjusting the scope, she found her first target, a hostile combatant attempting to flank the SEALs. The trigger squeezed gently, and the shot rang out, cutting through the noise with deadly accuracy. The enemy dropped instantly before they could sound the alarm. The SEAL team leader caught sight of her silhouette against the dimming light and motioned silently toward her. A spark of hope flickered in his eyes. They were not alone anymore. And this stranger could turn the tide. Their fire grew more focused, less frantic, as they synchronized with her deadly rhythm. The sniper continued to pick off enemies systematically. Her shots were precise, deliberate, each one weakening the encirclement and sowing confusion among the hostile forces. The enemy faltered their once coordinated assault, becoming disorganized and cautious. They began to withdraw, seeking cover and regrouping under the pressure of her unseen presence. The SEALs seized the moment, pushing forward through the thinning lines of the enemy. Their movements were calculated and swift, capitalizing on the chaos the sniper created. The team covered each other expertly, advancing toward a ridge that promised better vantage and a chance to call for extraction, but the forest was unforgiving, and the enemy was not ready to concede. The firefight intensified with renewed vigor, bullets ripping through the air and trees exploding under heavy fire. The sniper adjusted her position, moving deeper into the shadows to maintain the advantage, but the danger was closing in around her as well. The spotter beside the sniper communicated quietly, giving critical information about enemy movements and distances. Their partnership was seamless, a silent dance of precision and timing. But the spotter's voice carried urgency, warning that reinforcements were arriving and the window for escape was narrowing rapidly. The SEAL team fought with renewed determination, drawing strength from the sniper's lethal cover, but the enemy regrouped, launching a coordinated counterattack aimed at cutting off their retreat. The sniper's calm facade masked the growing pressure. She felt the weight of lives resting on her aim and every decision. A sudden explosion rocked the ridge, sending dirt and debris flying. The sniper was thrown off balance but quickly regained her composure, her breath steady, her finger steady on the trigger as she watched the enemy surge forward. Her mind raced, calculating the risks, balancing the need for aggression with the imperative of survival. The team leader shouted orders, signaling the SEALs to hold their ground. The sniper switched targets rapidly, taking out key threats, buying precious seconds. For the team to regroup and prepare for the next wave, the battle had become a deadly chess game. Each move critical, each shot a gamble. Amidst the chaos, the sniper spotted a group of enemy soldiers moving stealthily through the undergrowth, attempting to flank their position. She signaled the SEAL team leader, quickly relaying the information. The team adjusted their formation, preparing to counter the new threat. The sniper's breath was steady, despite the pounding of her heart. She knew the outcome depended on precision and timing. The forest around them seemed alive with danger and possibility, each shadow concealing an unknown enemy or a chance for survival. As the enemy closed in, the sniper fired again, her shots slicing through the night like whispers of death. The SEALs fought fiercely, taking advantage of the moment, the tide of battle shifting in their favor, but the fight was far from over and the cost was mounting. The spotter's voice cut through the static warning of another wave approaching faster and more organized than before. The sniper glanced toward the ridge, seeing the flicker of headlights signaling enemy reinforcements. Their time was running out, and the choices were becoming narrower and more desperate. The SEAL team prepared for a final push, knowing that failure meant death or capture. The sniper steadied herself, her rifle an extension of her will and determination. She was no longer just a lone figure in the woods, but the pivot on which the entire battle turned. Together they moved forward, the sniper covering the advance, the SEALs pressing the attack. But the enemy was relentless, and the forest seemed to close around them like a trap. Every step forward met with resistance, every breath a fight. For survival, the tension reached a breaking point as the sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the forest into near darkness. The sniper and the SEAL team were battered, weary, but unbroke. Their resolve hardened by the knowledge that they could not fail, that they had to survive and prevail, no matter the cost. And somewhere in the shadows, the enemy waited, watching, calculating, ready to strike again. In the darkness, the battle was far from over, and the night held its breath for what was to come. The forest had become a battlefield, soaked in tension and smoke, as the last traces of light slipped below the jagged tree line, leaving only shadows to dance in the chaos. The sniper adjusted. Her position once more, the ground beneath her damp and cold, the scent of gunpowder thick in the air. Her trigger finger remained still but ready, every movement deliberate, every breath measured. Below her, the SEAL team regrouped behind a cluster of moss-covered boulders, their formation tight, their communication now reduced to hand signals and instinct. They were survivors, yes, but even their hardened resolve could feel the walls of the forest pressing in with each minute that passed. The enemy had fallen back for now, but the silence that followed was not safety. It was the eye of a storm. The sniper peered through her scope, scanning the tree line for signs of movement. Her spotter, a few paces behind, whispered that they had perhaps 10 minutes before the next wave reached them, if they were lucky. She gave a small nod and repositioned, shifting the barrel toward a narrow trail where fresh footprints still marked the dirt. The enemy would return. She knew that with certainty. But what she did not yet know was from where or how many. A rustling sound broke the silence, too calculated to be the wind and too slow to be animal. The sniper froze her breath, catching as a dark figure moved through the undergrowth, crawling low and methodical. The shot needed to be perfect. No second chance, no margin for error. She steadied herself, inhaled once, exhaled slowly, and fired. The figure dropped silently, the forest absorbing the impact like it had seen this 1,000 times before. The shot did not go unnoticed. The enemy knew now that the sniper was still active, and worse, they knew roughly where she was. The spotter tapped her shoulder twice, urgent and sharp, and they both rolled back behind a rock formation, just as a hail of bullets tore through the tree where she had been a second earlier. The enemy was not guessing anymore. They were hunting. The SEAL team below returned fire, their line holding, but only barely. They were pinned, the enemy's numbers growing with each minute, and now coming from multiple angles. The team leader barked orders, but his voice was lost beneath the roar of gunfire. The forest lit up with brief flashes of light, and the scent of burning wood filled the air as trees caught fire from stray incendiaries. The sniper crawled forward, finding a new perch above the rest of the team. She could see them clearly now, crouched behind fallen trunks, exchanging fire in bursts of controlled fury. Her vantage point offered no safety, but a clean line of sight. And that was enough. She began calling out positions to the spotter, marking targets that threatened the team's flank, and one by one she began to eliminate them. Each shot cracked like thunder. But her face never changed. The spotter kept Count whispering numbers as the body count rose and the gaps in the enemy line widened. Still, the tide had not turned. Not yet. Then something changed. The enemy fire shifted subtly as if redirected toward a specific objective. The sniper followed. The movement, and her stomach dropped. 3 enemies were breaking off, moving along a low ridge with speed and purpose, and heading straight for the SEAL team's only viable escape route. They were trying to trap them, box them in, and cut off the last exit. She called it in to the team leader, who responded with a burst of gunfire in that direction, but it was clear the team could not spare enough men to intercept the flanking maneuver. The sniper did not wait for orders. She stood up low and ran across the slope, flanking the flankers, her boots thudding softly against the dirt. Her rifle clutched tight against her chest. She found a higher ridge overlooking the trail the enemy was using and waited, motionless. Her heartbeat was loud her ears louder than the gunfire, louder than the orders and screams and chaos. Her breath came steady, though, and when the first soldier entered her scope, she fired, and then another and another, until the entire group was down, the threat neutralized. In seconds, the move exposed her position again, and the retaliation was swift. Gunfire tore through the trees behind her, and she hit the ground rolling for cover. Bark splintered above her head as bullets shredded the trunk she had used for concealment. The spotter called for her on the radio, his voice panicked and strained. She responded quickly, confirming she was alive, but they both knew she was cut off. The SEAL team used the distraction to fall back toward a defensible rocky outcrop forming, a circle, and preparing for one last stand. The sniper crawled back toward them, low and quiet, her every movement measured and agonizingly slow. Her rifle was nearly empty, and she was down to her last magazine when she spotted the shape of a soldier, moving just ahead. Not SEAL. Not friendly. She ducked back and drew her sidearm, crawling forward inch by inch through the dense underbrush until she was behind him. One clean shot silenced the threat, but the effort had taken more than time. It had cost her position and safety and the element of surprise. She moved again this time, faster, risking detection to reach the team. The spotter reached out as she approached his face, a mix of relief and urgency. He handed her a fresh mag and pointed toward the ridge where the enemy was regrouping for what looked like a final push. The sniper nodded, took position behind a fallen log, and steadied herself for the last fight. Below the ridge, the SEAL team was silent, ready, weapons drawn their backs to each other and their eyes to the shadows. The enemy crept forward, unaware that the sniper was waiting. Her rifle trained her breathing calm, and as the first figure stepped into view, she pulled the trigger again, and again, and again. The sniper's rifle echoed once more through the trees as the enemy collapsed to the forest floor, his weapon still raised, but his eyes already gone cold. She chambered the next round, her hands steady as stone, though her mind felt the weight of every second. That passed. The SEAL team around her did not speak, did not shout. They simply moved like machines, like wolves trained by fire and sharpened by death. The forest around them breathed with smoke and tension, the moon a pale witness to the chaos below. The enemy was regrouping again, slower this time. More cautious, they had learned fear, and that fear gave the SEALs a sliver of space, just enough to act, just enough to hope. The team leader raised his hand, signaling movement toward the north ridge, the only path out that wasn't crawling with death. The sniper scanned ahead, then nodded once without a word. She sprinted forward, taking point, eyes cutting through the darkness, rifle ready for anything. The ground was slick from blood and rain, but she moved like she had done this 100 times, like the path was carved into her soul. Behind her, the team moved in unison, covering each other, their steps synchronized with the rhythm of war. Behind them, the trees burned in patches, casting flickering shadows across their faces, as if the forest itself was bleeding light and smoke. The spotter kept close, scanning the flanks. His breathing labored, but his voice calm in her ear as he called distances and directions. Then a sharp noise cracked through the air, not gunfire, not shouting. It was the low groan of bending metal and splintering wood. A trap had been triggered, something buried beneath the soil. One of the seals went down hard, caught in a snare that launched him into the air, the sound of bones snapping lost in the sudden roar of enemy fire. Chaos exploded from the tree line as muzzle flashes lit up the dark and bullets cut through leaves and bark. The sniper dropped flat, her rifle already turning toward the source. Of the shots, she fired once, twice, 3 times, and 3 shadows fell. But more were coming, and fast. The SEAL team returned fire, a wall of sound and fury, holding the enemy at bay as the injured man was pulled free, his leg, a ruined mess of blood and torn gear. The sniper covered the retreat, her shots echoing like a grim heartbeat through the forest, each one precise, each one necessary. The team pushed forward, their pace uneven, now burdened by injury and exhaustion, but they moved with purpose, driven not by orders but by survival. The sniper could feel the forest changing around them, the trees thinning, the ground rising, and then she saw it, the ridgeline. Just beyond it was a narrow pass, and on the other side a clearing wide enough for extraction if they could reach it, if they could hold it. The team leader called it out, a last stand, a final push, and no one questioned him, not even the wounded, not even the sniper. They reached the ridge and dug in, weapons, ready eyes scanning the darkness. The sniper took the high ground above them, her rifle steady, her soul quiet. The enemy was coming, and they knew this would be the end, one way or another. Then out of the darkness they came again, screaming this time, a full assault, desperate, to crush what remained of the SEAL team. The sniper fired without pause, dropping enemy after enemy, but they kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless, their fury blinding. The team held the line, bullets flying, smoke rising, bodies falling. The sniper moved like a shadow, her shots carving a path through the chaos. Her body ached, her mind screamed, but she did not stop. And then through the radio, a voice clear and strong, extraction inbound. 2 minutes out. It wasn't over, but they had a chance, and the sniper with 1 bullet left looked down her scope and waited for the last shadow to move.